Muchas gracias.
Good evening, and welcome to the Bill of Rights celebration for the ACLU of the District of Columbia. I'm Rebecca Coakley, a member of the Board of Directors, and I'll be the host of tonight's event. Before we begin tonight's program, I'd like to draw your attention to the accessibility features on the webinar. Closed captioning, American Sign Language interpretation, and Spanish interpretation are all available on this webinar. To view closed captions, hover your mouse over the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom window and click Show Subtitles. For the best viewing experience, we recommend watching it in full screen mode, which you can do by clicking the box in the top right-hand corner of the Zoom window. This webinar is being recorded and everyone is in listen-only mode. Tonight is a celebration of our work over the past year, but it is also a time for reflection. Many of the injustices that the ACLU-DC tirelessly fights to remedy are directly driven by racial inequality or intersect with it in some way. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the stolen land that we occupy in the Washington, D.C. area. The Piscataway Indian Nation and Piscataway Conoy Confederacy originally lived in parts of modern-day Maryland and D.C. Due to settler colonialism beginning in the 1600s, people were killed and displaced in Northern Virginia and Pennsylvania, and those who remained in Southern Maryland area have not been able to move from there since the early 20th century. White settlers separated Piscataways from important water sources, the Potomac, the Anacostia, and the Chesapeake. Connected to this, slave dealers in the United States, including in this area, would force enslaved people into shackles and pens, or what we now call family separation. We honor the Indigenous and the Black lives that were taken by violent colonialization and the enduring strength of these communities, and we commit to fighting white supremacy in all forms. Next, I would like to welcome the chair of the ACLU Board of Directors, Sam Doherty, to kick off the event with some thoughts on the organization's work this year and the work that lies ahead.
Thanks, Rebecca. And I want to welcome everyone to the 2020 Bill of Rights celebration. We've certainly seen a lot in 2020. Tonight is a celebration of our affiliates' resilience amid the ups and downs of this historic year, from the COVID-19 pandemic to this summer's protest in support of Black lives. Through every challenge, ACLU-DC staff, clients, board members, coalition partners, and you, our supporters, have risen to meet the moment and fiercely defended civil liberties and human rights together. Of course, the result of this presidential election is at the top of everyone's minds. America spoke last week, and in January, the presidency of Donald Trump will come to an end. Over the past 4 years, we've witnessed some of the cruelest policies in our nation's history. But we've also rallied to flood the streets and the courts to fight for freedom and equality. Now we must turn our attention to boldly leading freedom forward, because it's never been about one party, person, or president. We will have to continue to do everything in our power to advance bold action, not simply undoing the damage of the past 4 years, but building an America and a city where equality isn't just an ideal of the Constitution, it's a lived reality for all people. And we must recognize the urgent and essential task of protecting our democracy through the final months of the Trump administration. Across the country, and here in the district, the ACLU is ready to protect free speech and the right to protest, to fight for racial justice and bold reforms to policing, to fight for statehood, to keep families together regardless of immigration status, to defend access to abortion, and to uphold the rights of LGBTQ people that we fought so hard for. Tonight is about this affiliate. No matter who the president is, the hundreds of thousands of people who live here without representation in Congress, who work here, or who visit the district are counting on this affiliate to uphold civil liberties. And we're counting on you to help us do that. Tonight, we have a goal of raising at least $5,000, and a fellow member of our board of directors is generously matching donations made tonight up to $5,000. Whether you're a longtime supporter or you're new to the ACLU, your support matters. And I hope you'll make a gift tonight in an amount that's meaningful to you. To donate, visit aclu-dc.org/BOR. Donate. The link will be posted in the chat momentarily. To kick things off, I want to let you know that I'm making a donation tonight, and I hope you'll join me in supporting this amazing organization. So I'll now turn it back over to Rebecca to take us to the next part of the program.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that important framing. One of the ways that the ACLU staff across the nation have been staying connected with each other while working from home through an all-affiliate social events over Zoom, including a nationwide talent show. One performer in particular stole the show, and we are so lucky to have him here with us tonight. Dr. Amir Whitaker is policy counsel to the ACLU of Southern California, and in addition to his incredible legal work, he is also an incredibly talented musician who goes by the name Dr. Knucklehead. Live from Los Angeles, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Knucklehead.
All right. Peace, y'all. Good evening, DC. Peace to all my colleagues and peace to all of our ACLU supporters. I'm over here in LA holding up the West Coast end of this freedom fight, or joining that end of the freedom fight. And it's an honor to join y'all for this really important cause tonight. I'm going to put the lyrics to a song that I'm going to perform tonight. It's called a freedom song, and I actually dedicate it to all my ACLU colleagues there and all of our members supporting us. With the interpretations? All right, without any further ado, it's called a freedom song. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. That's what we fight for, freedom. Freedom, that's what we die for, freedom. Cause on the chains we can stand, there's those chains in hand. Keep your eyes on the past, hold on. Freedom's name is mighty sweet, pretty soon we talk to me. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. Yeah, free from the lies of this American dream, and free from the disguise of this inherited scheme that perishes kings, never cherishes queens. Free from trash set blatant yet so unseen. Free from homes over our homes, free from silent. Free from death penalty and state sanctioned violence. That means freedom from these cages that came after slavery. New Jim Crow ain't our first rodeo. Luckily, civil rights player got to go pro. He can say control just the right occasion. Freedom from deportations. Free, we're gonna need a miracle. We're free to say amen. Freedom in our hoods, less brutality. Freedom online with that net neutrality. Freedom in our schools with resources and truth. Free from prison pipelines designed for more loot. They've been profiting all freedom since 1619. We just hit 400 years, kind of frightening. That ain't alright, then join the fight and exhausted but enticing. And we gon' be alright, cause freedom of speech protected in our demonstration. Free through additional tactics of litigation, policy making, legislation, and agitation. Cause freedom never be given, it can only be taken. Freedom, That's what we want now. Freedom. Freedom. That's what we fight for. Freedom. Cause only change we can stand is those chains in hand in hand. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Freedom's name is mighty sweet. Pretty soon we got me. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. All we say to America is be true to what you say on paper. All we say to America is be true to what you say on paper. Yeah. Yeah. Freedom's name is mighty sweet. Pretty soon we got to meet. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Cause only change we can stand is those chains in hand in hand. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Thank you all. Hold on, our people. Keep up the freedom fight. Keep up this freedom work. Honored to join y'all. And congratulations to all our prize winners and awardees tonight. Keep your eyes on the prize, y'all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Knucklehead. Our first award of the night is the Henry W. Edgerton Award, which honors those who have shown a remarkable commitment to civil liberties. This year's honoree, M.B. Cottingham, is a lifelong DC resident who fought for his rights after being searched in a sexually invasive manner by a DC police officer. Experiences like his are unfortunately all too frequent in DC, and Mr. Cottingham bravely shares his story to draw attention to this unlawful practice. We'd like to share that story again. As a warning to our audience, this video contains footage of the invasive search.
The thought that kept running across my mind is, they gonna kill you. So I thought about teddy bears being up under the tree or becoming a hashtag. I have kids that I have to live for. So they were on my mind, me dying was on my mind, like trying to make all of the right moves. A few of my friends and I had gathered along the sidewalk, you know, to discuss what were my plans. Hey, what you doing today for your birthday? Okay, I spread my arms, you know, and do the normal procedure that it comes to in the neighborhood that I live in, you know.
He all right, man. Let him do his thing.
No, he grabbing my shit. Come on, man.
Come
Come on, man. Hold, you stuck your finger in my
Hey, he
ass.
don't got nothing on him. He all right?
Yeah, don't do that.
He don't got nothing on him.
He stuck his finger in my cat, man. Don't do that, man.
Nah, he don't got nothing. Come on, man. He don't got nothing on him.
At this point, he places the cuffs on me because I turned around. With the cuffs on me, I feel helpless.
Yes, sir. No problem.
All right, man, we're just waiting on a few minutes to get served.
This the wrong neighborhood, man. Ain't even nothing else going on, y'all.
Come on, man. Stop fingering me, though,
Stop
bruh.
moving.
You fingering my ass, man.
He thrust his finger forward as if he was trying to go inside of my rectum to see if anything was in there. I'm speechless now on what would drive a person to do that. countless other times, I've been attacked by officers. That's not the way I want to live. I think about being harassed. Am I going to still be able to roam and walk in the community that my child and my nephews and little cousins, play in? That's what I'm concerned about at this point. Gotta stand for something, right? Yeah.
To present this award, please welcome our legal director, Scott Michaelman.
Hello. Thanks, Rebecca, and good evening to everyone. Months after the search, you just heard Mr. Cottingham say he was speechless on what would drive a person to do that search. But being speechless does not mean being voiceless. We just heard Mr. Cottingham tell his story in his own words, and nothing I can say can match the power of his voice. What I can tell you is the broader context of the difference that he made by asking ACLU-DC to file a case about this search, what he risked in speaking out, and how he used his voice to help shine a needed spotlight on a dark area of police practices in the District of Columbia. Due in part to the press and outrage generated from Mr. Cottingham's lawsuit in which he obtained a settlement, Officer Logicono was placed on leave and ultimately fired for conducting searches like this. At a hearing on whether the officer could keep his job, he argued that his search was acceptable, that senior officers taught him these techniques while patrolling DC, and that he'd executed such searches 100 times. Other officers testified that they too conduct such searches because they'd been trained that way. A veteran officer in the training academy confirmed that he teaches officers, don't be afraid to go up in the crotch. We knew from prior complaints to our office that this invasive and dehumanizing practice was all too common for MPD, but it took Mr. Cottingham's lawsuit and his powerful voice to force the issue out into the open and onto the police reform agenda. The go up in the crotch training officer was fired. The review board upheld the decision to fire Officer Logicono. This type of accountability has been all too rare for a police department whose pattern of dealing with problematic officers is to quietly transfer them to different precincts rather than halt unconstitutional behavior. Outside of MPD's actions, the impact of Mr. Cottingham's case rippled through DC communities. Earlier this year, we filed another suit on behalf of another community member who was harmed by the same invasive search method. An investigative report by Channel 4 on the heels of our filing brought together the stories of our lawsuits with new reporting about at least a dozen complaints about that same problem, interviews in which officers described the department's encouraging attitude toward these abusive search tactics, and a revelation that MPD had failed to share complaints on this subject with DC's Office of Police Complaints. In coming forward about what Officer Logicono did, Mr. Cottingham used his voice and his example to encourage others to do the same. In hindsight, we can recognize Mr. Cottingham's impact on DC, but the knowledge of what his case would accomplish was by no means obvious at the start. Mr. Cottingham asserted his rights in a country that struggles still to agree on the simple principle that Black Lives Matter. In asking for our help, he spoke out against a police department that has repeatedly harassed him since he was 14 years old. He also displayed a courage to be vulnerable and ask for help with a search that made him feel like his dignity had been stripped away and his life was on the line if he made the wrong move. He struggled with anxiety and depression after the encounter and withdrew from some social relationships. He stopped performing as an entertainer and put his ice cream business on hold for a time. This was not an experience anyone would want to have to recount, much less expose himself to questioning about by the officer's lawyers. But Mr. Cottingham went forward with litigation anyway, because he was determined to make a difference. I come back to Mr. Cottingham's words at the end of that video. Got to stand for something, right? That casual rhetorical question masks what a tough and bold choice he made by coming forward. The impact of this case and Mr. Cottingham's courageous resolve are why I am honored to present to Mr. Cottingham the 2020 Henry W. Edgerton Civil Liberties Award, given to recognize the recipient's commitment to civil liberties. Mr. Cottingham's bravery and trust in us enabled us to bring attention and scrutiny and even first steps toward reform to the traumatizing search practice that he experienced. And his case reinforced the notion that all aspects of Black life matter, including the dignity of being secure in one's body and oneself. Mr. Cottingham, it was my great honor to represent you. Congratulations. I'm sorry. I'm told that we're having some technical difficulties hearing from Mr. Cottingham at this time. That there's a difficulty syncing up the audio and the video. So I'm gonna wait until I hear the go ahead from Lauren, our showrunner. But in this moment, while we're waiting to hear from Mr. Cottingham himself, I just want to say what a great privilege it was to represent him. When clients come to us, they come to us with some of the hardest experiences they've had in their lives, and that can take a toll on how they interact with the world, on how they interact with everyone. Mr. Cottingham was such a class act throughout this process. We asking him to tell his story over and over, to get the complaint ready, to get the press ready. He sat through and participated in, I can't even tell you how many interviews to try to get the story to break through at a time when a lot of things were going on in the district and in the country and in the world. And so, it was his diligence, it was his persistence that really made this happen, not only in coming to us, but in the way he worked with us and pressed forward with really every aspect of this suit to make the district better. And so now I'm being told we have the audio, so I'll be quiet now and let everyone hear from him.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is M.B. Cottingham. Today has become a very special day by being presented with such a prestigious and honorable award from an organization that stands for American Civil Liberties, such as the ACLU. I would first like to thank the ACLU and its staff members, especially Mr. Barry Swister, Scott Michaelman, Stephen Ito, Monica Hopkins, Elaine Stamp, and Michael Perlow, whom I developed personal relationships with while dealing with such a frustrating and damaging issue. For far too long, police brutality, humiliation, and bullying, along with countless other instances and injustices, have plagued our communities from the shadows and blind spots of our nation's capital and all over the country. I say our community because that word represents all, and not selfishly a particular ethnic group of people. During the unfortunate event that I endured, I had a slew of thoughts running through my mind, such as life, death, and simply surviving to see another day not being killed by police. In that video, when it's played in its entirety on YouTube, I can be heard saying you know what? Which means I'm not going to let them get away. That statement was said to myself in my head, but it happened to be heard out loud in the video. That's when I decided enough is enough. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of feeling like this and sick of seeing this whole Black experience being played out with such malice. So at this point, I made a conscious decision to be the face and voice of Ward 8 of Washington, D.C., in which I happen to live. And I stand up to the MPD and anybody else who agreed with the whole concept of police are always right and you as a civilian are always wrong. In closing, I must say that I, M.B. Cottingham, proudly accept this award from the ACLU, and I find some comfort in the fact that my issue, which happens to be a minority issue, has been acknowledged. Thank you.
Mr. Cottingham, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Our next award is the Alan and Adrian Barth Award, which recognizes extraordinary volunteer service to the ACLU of DC. Tonight, we honor the law firm of Arnold and Porter for their generous pro bono support on 3 important cases this year. Arnold and Porter is a household name in the legal community, but for those of you who aren't familiar with their work, we have a short video to introduce you to the firm.
Our commitment to pro bono is core to who we are as a law firm. Arnold & Porter's pro bono program enables our lawyers to handle, on a first-chair basis, cutting-edge civil rights issues, including significant voting rights matters. We represent clients on a range of criminal defense matters, immigration reform, and civil poverty law. And we counsel on transactional, regulatory, and international pro bono matters. Every day across all of our offices, our lawyers are performing incredibly important work for our pro bono clients.
To present this award, please welcome our senior counsel, Art Spitzer.
Hi, am I back on? I lost the video for a moment. Thank you, Rebecca, and thanks to everyone for tuning in this evening. In 1980, about 15 years after we began presenting an annual Bill of Rights award, we decided that it was important to add an award specifically to recognize and honor people and groups who provided exemplary volunteer service to the local ACLU. The ACLU couldn't do what it does without the contributions of volunteers, lawyers who donate their time to help us litigate cases, lawyers and non-lawyers who have come to the office to answer telephones, stuff envelopes, handle intake, keep membership records, and so forth. We named the new award after Alan Barth. He was one of the founders of the local ACLU and was also the head of the Washington Post editorial board during the McCarthy era and beyond, when he courageously stood up for civil liberties and civil rights. After his death, his wife Adrian became one of our most loyal office volunteers and herself received the Barth Award. After she died, we renamed the award to add her. Back to the present, in the past year, the law firm of Arnold & Porter has provided extraordinary volunteer service to the ACLU of DC on three fronts. Most dramatically, when Attorney General Barr ordered law enforcement troops to attack peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square so President Trump could walk to St. John's Church, we joined with Arnold and Porter and the Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Urban Affairs to file a class action lawsuit seeking damages for the people whose rights had been violated. The case was filed just 3 days after the attack, something like a land speed record, and making full use of Arnold and Porter's resources, we've been able to interview many of the demonstrators and identify and sue many of the individual law enforcement officers who used unjustified force. The case is Black Lives Matter DC versus Trump. Almost as dramatically, when the COVID-19 pandemic arrived, we were confronted with a certain knowledge that St. Elizabeth's Hospital, the district's public mental hospital, would inevitably become a COVID hotspot, highly dangerous for patients and staff alike. As it happened, we already had a class action lawsuit pending against St. Elizabeth's, with Arnold and Porter as co-counsel and again with the Washington Lawyers Committee, because of a crisis there last fall that left patients without access to running water or much treatment for weeks. Just 1 week after Mayor Bowser's first COVID emergency declaration in March, we moved for an emergency order in that case, compelling the hospital to better protect its patients. We retained public health and mental health experts who visited the hospital and provided detailed testimony about its shortcomings. In April, the court issued emergency relief, and in May, a preliminary injunction, which remains in effect while the case goes forward. For our third case, we're also co-counsel now with Arnold and Porter, representing an elderly deaf resident of DC public housing whose disability we believe has been inadequately accommodated. This is also an excellent example of impact litigation, a targeted case with the potential to help not just this client, but many disabled people in the district. Of course, a law firm is a group of people, and we'd be remiss not to name the people who've been spending many late nights and weekends working to advance the cause of justice in these three cases: John Friedman, David Kuba, Tom McSorley, Sonia Tabriz, Ali Gardner, Catherine McCarthy, Katie Rosenberg, Tirza Lolar, Brian Vaca, Caitlin Horn, Jamie Lee, Brian Israel, Rebecca Michael, and Max Preston. We're grateful to each of these people and to Arnold and Porter for supporting their exceptional pro bono efforts in working with us on such timely and important cases. John Friedman is with us tonight to accept this award. On behalf of the ACLU of DC, it's a pleasure for me to present the Alan and Adrian Barth Volunteer Service Award to Arnold and Porter.
Thanks, Art. On behalf of Arnold and Porter, it is a high honor to accept this award from the ACLU of the District of Columbia. It's an understatement, a big understatement, to say that we live in challenging times. But when I think about it, there's no other organization that has risen to the challenge of our times and vindicated our constitutional rights like the ACLU. I'm going to give two examples. Art talked about them both, but from my own work with the organization over the last year. As Art mentioned, a little over a year ago, we sued with the ACLU and the Washington Lawyers Committee the management of St. Elizabeth's Hospital, the District of Columbia's only public psychiatric facility, which houses individuals living with serious and persistent mental illness. Our suit followed a bacterial outbreak in the plumbing system, which led the hospital to turn off the water for a month. This led to serious deterioration in hygienic conditions and the cessation of mental health care. And our suit, as Art mentioned, was pending in early April when St. Elizabeth's announced that one patient and several staff members had contracted COVID-19. We learned from our clients that the hospital was not taking basic precautions to protect the health, either the physical or the mental health of the patient population, exposing all of the patients to unacceptable risks. The hospital was not following basic preventive measures recommended by the Centers for Disease Control, like quarantining or isolating individuals who had COVID symptoms requiring mask use, requiring social distancing, and they severely curtailed mental health care at the hospital. And COVID-19 was spreading, and it was spreading quickly in the facility. So we went to court and we obtained an injunctive relief. First, a temporary restraining order and then a preliminary injunction requiring the facility to follow basic CDC guidance. Since the entry of those orders, the number of new cases at the facility has slowed dramatically. Now, the ACLU was in the vanguard of protecting vulnerable populations from COVID. In addition to their work at St. Elizabeth's, they also obtained similar relief for prisoners at the DC jail and at DC's largest halfway house. Let me discuss a second challenge. On May 25th, the day after our preliminary injunction in the St. Elizabeth's case was granted, George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. George Floyd's death was captured on tape, and it caused an international outrage and international protests about police brutality. In Washington, D.C., the protests were organized by Black Lives Matter DC and started on May 28th, and were focused on Lafayette Square, the plaza outside the White House. Peaceful protests continued across the nation and in Lafayette Square through the weekend. Now, the president living in the White House across from Lafayette Square didn't like these protests. He issued tweets calling protesters around the country thugs and anarchists. On May 31st, he said, quote, "This isn't going to stop until the good guys are willing to use overwhelming force against the bad guys." And on June 1st, he told the nation's governors that they had to, quote, "dominate protesters," and, quote, "in Washington, we're going to do something people haven't seen before." And at 6:30 p.m. that evening, June 1st, in Washington, D.C., the president did something people haven't seen before. The collected police forces on the square attacked the peaceful protesters using tear gas and other chemical irritants, flash grenades, and rubber bullets. And about half an hour later, the president walked across Lafayette Square and held a photo opportunity in front of St. John's Church on the far side of the square from the White House. The following day, the Department of Justice acknowledged that Attorney General Barr personally ordered Lafayette Square to be cleared in advance of the president's photo opportunity. Now, in directing the troops to attack protesters, the Attorney General was playing up the general part of being Attorney General, but he seems to have forgotten the attorney part. Because in this country, we have a Constitution and we have a Bill of Rights. And as the president likes to remind us when he is complaining about his tweets getting deleted, the First Amendment provides for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom to petition for redress. So 3 days later, we filed a suit, Black Lives Matter DC, against Trump, Attorney General Barr, and others. We've sued the Attorney General both in his official and his personal capacity because we think it is important to remind him of what the Constitution says, and that if he instructs others to violate the constitutional rights of peaceful protesters, he should be held accountable. We certainly live in challenging times, but the ACLU has been there to meet that challenge. So I want to say again that it is a high honor on behalf of my firm to receive this award. Thank you.
John and the Arnold and Porter team, thank you for your work. I want to take a moment to remind everyone that we have a goal of raising at least $5,000 tonight to support ACLU-DC. The link to donate is in the chat box, and we hope that those who are able will be able to make a gift in recognition of our honorees and to help us start 2021 strong. Once more, I'd like to introduce Dr. Knucklehead before we return back to the program for a special surprise.
Yes, peace, y'all. Excited to share one more song. And wow, those were powerful stories. I definitely remember when that happened in DC, and 3 days to respond is a record. And congrats to MB as well, and for that bravery, because I myself have been stopped and frisked since I was 13 years old in my own community. So I can relate there, brother. So shout out to the colleagues for keeping up that great work. This song is called Trouble and Descent, and it's dedicated to all our colleagues there doing this work, but also their ancestors doing this work, who've done this work. I'm gonna put the lyrics here in the chat box again. But specifically to John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, the great John Lewis, who fought for that sacred right to vote for us and always wrote about that. So we're gonna talk about necessary trouble here. Yeah. Mama said if they ever give me trouble, fight back. Pop said release trouble, some thoughts and write raps. Otherwise you might snap, crackle, pop, clap back. The trouble by design is why they call it trap. They come trouble red and blue, cause the crew brown and black. That trouble try to shoot, treading water, no relax. Trouble in this world with facts become perhaps. Science is fiction, fill description to the max. Trouble gotta go and fro so you can keep the crown. Attorney in law still prone to dress down. Cut from a different cloth, this Wakanda textile. Said he couldn't breathe and they pinned him chest down. Burn so deep, you can see the flesh now. So when it's my turn to speak, best believe I flex out. Rest in peace, John Lewis, you are ancestor now. We gon' always be in trouble, may y'all all rest in power. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something. Get in trouble, for the squad. Violate our rights, we gon' organize a suit. Descendants patriotic, still red, white, and blue. Squad so savage, got a hell of a crew. Better check the 4 letters. ACLU, fist in the air, it's the freedom salute. Carry the torch and our team be the truth. Who they gon' call up when Trump back the food? Tell them check the 4 letters. ACLU, check the 4 letters. Respect the 4 letters. Okay, respect the 4 letters. Check the 4 letters. Now when I say free, y'all say speech. Free, free. When I say racial, y'all say justice. Racial justice, racial justice. When I say women's, y'all say rights. Women's rights, women's rights. When I say voting, y'all say rights. Voting rights, voting rights. When I say civil, y'all say rights. Civil rights, civil rights. When I say freedom, y'all say fight. Freedom, fight. Freedom, fight. Freedom, fight. Freedom, fight. Yeah, freedom, fight. Yeah, violate our rights, we gon' organize a suit. Descendants patriotic, still red, white, and blue. Squad so savage, got a hell of a crew. Better check the 4 letters. ACLU, fist in the air, it's the freedom salute. Carry the torch and our team be the truth. Who they gon' call up with Trump at the food? Tell them check the 4 letters. ACLU, check the 4 letters. Or catch respect the 4 letters. Respect the 4 letters. Check the 4 letters. Peace to all my troubled descendants, to the knuckleheads. Keep up the freedom fight, y'all. Peace.
Thank you so much for rocking out with us tonight, Amir. We've been promising a surprise in all of the promotions for this event, and it's time we finally let you in on something that our staff have secretly been planning for months. Please welcome our Executive Director, Monica Hopkins.
Thank you, Rebecca. And it's great to have so many ACLU-DC members here with us tonight. And I am so excited to announce a surprise award this evening. There is an oft-told parable popularized in the 1930s by social reformer and community organizer Saul Alinsky, but likely adapted from a story by Irving Zola that goes like this. A group of people are standing at a riverbank and suddenly hear a baby crying. Shocked, they see an infant struggling in the water. One person immediately dives in to rescue the child, but right away another baby comes floating down the river, and then another. People continue to jump in to save babies, and then see that one person has started to walk away from the group still on shore. Accusingly, they shout, "Where are you going? We need everyone available to help save these drowning babies." The response? "I'm going upstream to stop whoever's throwing babies into the river." When new staff members join our team at the ACLU-DC, this analogy is often used to explain how impact litigation seeks to address systemic problems. And we need to look no further than Art Spitzer to see this parable in action. Art Spitzer has marched upstream along this river for the past 40 years. With a legal docket spanning the full run of the ACLU's issue areas, Art's mighty pen and sharp analytic eye have expanded and defended civil liberties for the thousands of people who live in, work in, and visit the District of Columbia. Acting out of his deep, principled commitment to the First Amendment, he's represented clients on the political left and the political right. Through both litigation and legislation, Art has been a principal architect of free speech law in the nation's capital. But Art is even more than a nationally recognized expert on the First Amendment. He is a true civil liberties generalist. His clients have included not only the famous and infamous, but also the anonymous. A John Doe held in government captivity overseas without due process. Jane Doe immigrant minors whom the government blocked from obtaining abortions, and those most marginalized by society, such as the capital defendant he successfully represented in the Supreme Court, and DC foster children for whom Art has fought to reform a dysfunctional system in litigation spanning more than 30 years. Art is no less dedicated to his colleagues than to his clients. He is always willing to drop everything and talk through a thorny problem or deliver a deeply thought out yet pragmatic advice via emails sent at whyyoustill-awake-o'clock. He has counseled and advised multiple generations of up-and-coming lawyers, many of whom who have gone on to successful careers of their own, both inside and outside the ACLU, including our current legal director, Scott, for whom Art has been a mentor for 15 years before passing the baton earlier this year. In recognition of his many accomplishments, his tireless fight for civil liberties, his willingness to defend the unpopular and the marginalized, and his deep humanity and generous spirit, tonight we inaugurate the ACLU-DC Arthur B. Spitzer Award, to be given to individuals who have embodied over the course of many years a commitment to fighting for the constitutional rights and civil liberties of all. Art's work has made such an incredible difference, but don't just take my word for it. We'll now hear from several ACLU leaders who recorded video messages about what Art's work has meant to them.
Art Spitzer, I'm here to celebrate you, to thank you, to raise a glass to you, and to launch this Art Spitzer Award, a living tribute to a man who's given so much to the ACLU. 40 years. I worked with you for 19 of them, and I've been amazed at the breadth of your expertise, at your versatility. I was always amazed, like, who is this Art Spitzer guy who's in every single one of our lawsuits, whether it's the anti-terrorism and war on terror lawsuits, or the protest lawsuits from the World Bank to Lafayette Square. And that's because you're in such a key place, in such a key geography, a key affiliate, and you have played such a key role. So I really, hats off to you, Art. Really appreciate you. I want to thank you for everything you've done. Wish you well, and it's no better way to pay tribute to you than to honor you with an award that will be ongoing of folks who follow in your footsteps.
Congratulations, Art. You are so deserving of this award in your name, and the fact that others in the future will also receive this award because of their work in the protection of civil liberties as well is so important. You have worked 24/7 for over the last 40 years to protect people's civil liberties. Thank you. Hundreds and thousands of people have been positively affected by your work. Thank you.
As you know better than most, no civil liberties victory is ever permanently won. But there would have been many fewer victories over the past 4 decades if it were not for your tireless efforts. You have been a stalwart, and the ACLU, and even more importantly, the country, are better off because of your efforts. Thanks.
When I was an attorney at National, we of course had our veins of competition. And one major effort was to win Art Spitzer's favor, because of course Art was a very tough editor and made us all immensely better attorneys. At one point, we were co-counseling on a First Amendment case. I emailed an opinion, and Art responded with this email simply saying, "I defer to Lee." I printed that email out, I highlighted it. If we ever had an argument, I'd point to the email as a trump card. I am not currently in my office due to the pandemic, so unfortunately I had to make a perfect facsimile of this email. My prized possession.
One important lesson that I learned from Art was the craft of writing a good civil liberties legal brief, especially the importance of tone. So many times, the government agencies we litigate against take ridiculous, offensive positions that can easily be cloaked in some artfully draped legal doctrine. But Art repeatedly showed me that a little bit of wit or even snark can help draw the judge's attention to the horror that lies underneath those layers.
Hi, Art. You know, back in 1980, when your predecessor, Ralph Temple, left, I remember wondering how anybody was going to match him. Well, you've more than matched him and become one of the ACLU's most durable and reliable heroes. You have kept your civil liberties compass exactly where it should be when not everyone else has. And that's why I think that the ACLU and the whole country needs people like you, Art, now more than ever. It's been my privilege and honor and pleasure to call you my colleague over all these decades. So don't stop now. Keep on keeping on.
Art, you have fought for civil liberties in the district where I've been a resident for your entire career, for 40 years, representing everyone from transgender employees to death row inmates to ERA and Black Lives Matter protesters. You are synonymous with civil liberties. In fact, I sometimes thought it was the Arts Civil Liberties Union when I was a resident of the district and saw all the work you did on behalf of the civil liberties of us all. So congratulations on this award.
To present this award to Art, I have the distinct privilege of introducing Johnny Barnes. Johnny is an attorney in DC and a tireless advocate for civil rights. In the 1970s, he served as chief of staff to Walter Fauntleroy, the District of Columbia's first ever non-voting delegate to Congress that marshaled support for a bill granting DC home rule. And I had the pleasure of knowing Johnny Barnes as my predecessor at the ACLU of the District of Columbia from 2002 to 2012. Johnny, take it away.
Hello?
You're on, Johnny.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. I became executive director shortly before 9/11. You will recall, Arthur, that Steve, Fritz, Beverly, you and I met and mapped out a plan of activities for the coming year. Then everything changed. We should never forget the thousands killed in New York, the Pentagon, and on that hill in Pennsylvania. Yes, everything changed, but Arthur Barry Spitzer did not. The new TSA said to a young Latino woman, a former Marine, but not yet a citizen, "You're fired." Art Spitzer stood with her. A Muslim firefighter was disciplined for wearing his kufi for religious reasons. Art defended him, and he was returned to duty. A decorated Army colonel hired as a man was fired when he reported to work as a woman. Art successfully argued against summary dismissal. For over 40 years, Art has been steady, steadfast, and true. A group of innocent young Black men residing on the edge of an affluent community became the targets of a no-knock search, the kind of which resulted in the death of Breonna Taylor. Art advocated for them. The police chief apologized. Anwar al-Awlaki, an American and Muslim cleric, relocated to Yemen and became a target on the CIA's kill list. I too would want due process as a citizen before a killer drone could be aimed at me. Art was there for him. Arthur has represented Louis Farrakhan and the Ku Klux Klan. He has been the lawyer for PETA and for anti-choice protesters. He argued a case, as was said, before the Supreme Court, which held that indigent criminal defendants are entitled to expert assistance at government expense. Imagine DC, and as Anthony noted, this nation, without Art's work over the past 40 years. That is why we celebrate you, Arthur. The cause need not be popular and often is not. It need not be politic or safe. The cause need only invoke the first 10 amendments and Art will be there. The Twin Towers have risen from the ashes. The grass on that hill, once scorched earth, has grown again. The Pentagon is now a place of peaceful reflection and tranquil waters, such that we're stimulated to look to the future, not haunted by the past. Our rights are much more fragile, however, not so easily restored. When it's often the case, they become the first casualty of conflict. This president has taught us that, if nothing else. This is a living tribute, Arthur, in your name, so that others will be encouraged and inspired to learn what you know. We chuckled when Art's wife, Elizabeth, presented a photo of him in a Superman outfit. But think about it. When it comes to using the Bill of Rights as a tool to help, Art really is faster than a speeding bullet. Arthur knows that rights like muscles will weaken unless vigorously exercised. Across the landscape of time, through the muddy waters of history over a span of 40 years, you have earned this tribute, Arthur, and it will stimulate those who come after you to know why. It is more than an honor for me to officially present the inaugural Arthur B. Spitzer Award to the greatest constitutional mind that I know, and I mean that sincerely, Arthur Barry Spitzer.
It makes it difficult using a Zoom background. There's my wife looming over my shoulder, and I'm holding up this plaque. There it is. Thank you very much, which she just handed me. So she was in on the surprise, which was a complete surprise to me. So thank you, Monica. Thank you, the rest of the staff. Thank you all for not giving me the slightest hint that this was happening. Thank you to all the people on video, if you're watching, for your lovely and flattering and not fully deserved words. It's been rewarding and also, I have to say, fun to do what I've been doing for the last 40 years. I'm really honored beyond what I can say to have an award named after me. And I certainly look forward, as the staff knows, to continuing to do this for, I hope, another 40 years. So thank you all, and keep up the good work, and I'll help however I can.
You should say hi to all your friends who are signed on. You don't know them, but
As a board member, I feel like I am a 24/7 ambassador of the ACLU-DC, which makes me a card-carrying fangirl of the Art Spitzer fan club. Congratulations, Art, for all that you've done. I love Johnny's story about the Superman photo. And as a regular participant of DC Awesome Con, I can't really say that Art isn't Superman. I mean, I've been to Awesome Con every year and I've seen Superman, but yet I've never seen him and Art in the same space. Huh, that's something to think about. Everyone, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. We have one last thing to celebrate, you. 2020 has been an incredibly hard year for everyone, but support from our ACLU-DC community has been the bright spot, even in the toughest of moments. Our work truly wouldn't be possible without any of you. I'm thrilled to say that we've raised $14,000, which totally surpassed our fundraising goal for tonight's event. If the stories you heard tonight have inspired you to action, head to the link in the chat to make your gift so that we are prepared for the work ahead. Thank you and good night.